Okay, so this is a little shorter talk, maybe 30 minutes it'll be over. Just to give you some sort of ideas about habits to cultivate to do research that are helpful. And um, one can again write a book on this, but I'll try to keep it as short as possible. So the habit of study is the foundation for any good research career. And I just want to talk about Patanjali Yoga Sutras, in which the idea of study first appears, as far as I can tell, in the Indian philosophical tradition. Swajaya Ishtadevata Samprayogaha. By self-study, you realize your desired goal. Now, as I mentioned in the earlier talk, the Ishtadevata doesn't mean necessarily a deity. Ishtadevata means your chosen field, your chosen goal. Devata is to be interpreted in that sense. And by working toward it, you realize it. I mean, if you want to become an Olympic athlete, a marathon runner, you have to apply yourself daily to that. So this verse is often translated in a theistic sense, but really speaking, the word Devata means ideal or goal. And in the Indian tradition, we have a deity for every field of knowledge, whether it's dance, drama, art, literature, medicine, science, mathematics. So that's just a way of kind of fixing it in your mind. No knowledge can come without study, and that too must be self-study, that you have to study by yourself, which means your knowledge has to be experiential. It isn't information that is gained by self-study, but rather illumination. So there's this whole aspect of what I call personalization of knowledge. You have to become part of your own experience. You're beyond this idea somehow of regurgitating material taught in class just so that you can get a grade and pass the course. That kind of mentality has to be given up, and you have to experience that. As I think Ramakrishna would say, you may read all the books about the mango, you will not know anything about the mango. If you eat a mango, but don't even know the name of the mango, you know more about the mango than anybody else who has read all the books about the mango. So this is the idea of mathematics as an experiential. You have to personalize this knowledge. Yad bhavam tada anubhavam. I mentioned this already. Our attitude towards study determines the depth of our experience. So if I, for example, I'm speaking to another person, I think that person is an idiot, even if the person is telling me Brahma Gnana, the highest wisdom, I will not get it. You can see that in the Mahabharata itself. Duryodhana had also met Krishna. Krishna was talking profound philosophy, but because the attitude was misplaced, you don't get the depth of the experience. As an undergraduate, you have to take a regimen of courses, pass some exams, get your bachelor's degree, but this information gathering has to change at the graduate level. The only way this can change is to derive the theorem with your bare hands. That is, the theorem must become a part of your experience. That way, its hidden dimensions become revealed. So in the vast library of mathematical knowledge, or any system of knowledge, find something you find interesting, amazing, and simply wonderful. Just find that ananda bhavam that you have to have, and then go with it with all your energy. There's no other way. This is the only way for deeper knowledge and illumination. So time is the teacher. Time is interesting. Time is universal. Everybody gets the same amount of time. There's no aristocracy of time. Everybody gets 24 hours. You can't hoard time. You can't store tomorrow today. This kind of thing cannot be. Somehow, time is the universal teacher, the divine mother, whatever you want to call. Time, to learn anything, you must use time properly. Time is the teacher. She is Kala Shakti. Kala Shakti is time energy, sometimes symbolized as Kali, the mythological figure Kali. But Kala Shakti is time. You must set aside a fixed amount of time every day for this study. Seated alone at your desk with notebook in hand, For an hour or two, you must analyze the theorem and perceive its component parts. You must see how the whole thing has been put together. You can also examine the evolution of the theorem. Who were the main contributors? What were their ideas? The historical view, evolution in time, helps our understanding. Our understanding becomes richer. So this pertains to a question that was asked earlier about how to make some dry theorem living. And the idea is you can see that the theorem evolved in time. Special cases may have already been discovered earlier by other mathematicians. So the theorem has a certain history. And by looking at the theorem from this historical perspective, you get an overview, you get a larger picture of things, and you appreciate a certain depth. So time, historical evolution in time, is an important feature. Through such a regulated study comes intimate knowledge, not just superficial knowledge, and the theorem becomes your own, so to speak. So through such self-study, you build a veritable library in your own mind of ideas and ideals, that they come to help you in your deeper studies. So you must cultivate the habit of making notes. And the notebook is very important. Whether you're attending a lecture or in your own room studying a paper or book, the habit of writing things down in your own words is absolutely essential. Even if you go to a library to browse, a notebook in hand is helpful to record references that you come across. And you can pencil these in for your later study. Sometimes reading a paper in a journal, you find questions arising in your own mind that the author had not addressed. I mean, I talked about this in the earlier segment. You can write down these questions for later reflection. It may be the start of a new line of research. So when you get an idea for a research paper, treat it with respect. Write it down in your notebook and try to add to it every day. I say this in a funny sort of way. If you reject this gift from Mahasaraswati, your own idea will come back with an alienated majesty through the work of others. Now, in this aspect, there's the subconscious mind. All creative people know that the subconscious mind is a vast resource of new ideas. But these new ideas don't emerge unless there's an urgent need, a conscious desire that activates them. Many scientists have noted that intense efforts are needed before a brilliant idea appears. Effort is the means of churning the mind. I mean, I told you in the last part, the Samudra Manthan story of churning the mind. How do you do it? Well, you do it through effort. And just as we concentrate and work hard, we also have to stop overthinking and learn how to wait patiently to catch the glimmer of a new idea as it streaks across the firmament of our own mental consciousness. So just as it's important to think hard and study, look at the component parts of a proof, you also have to learn how not to think about it. Put it aside. And so another idea emerges. Now, when we begin a paper in earnest, we find it essentially writes itself, provided we apply our mind regularly and complete the work on a daily basis. So it's very important to keep some sort of daily regularity, but it's also essential to take time away from the problem. And there are many ways of doing this. Take a walk, play some music, play a sport. You can't play tennis and at the same time think about your problem. You would not only not solve your problem, but you'll also not be playing tennis. So it's important to change your thing. Sometimes you have to cook your meal. Cooking takes the mind away from the problem. But if you're thinking about your problem while cooking, you're being counterproductive. You will neither solve your problem nor cook your food properly. So this is the idea of changing your mental work to kind of take a break from the thought process and let the subconscious kind of fertilize, incubate these ideas. There must be a balance between intense work and recreation. I mean, you find this in the Gita as well. Yuktahara viharasya, yukta chestasya karmasu, yukta swapnava bodhasya, yogo bhavati dukkha. So you have to balance intense work with recreation, rest, sleep. Also is important. You can't be staying awake all night trying to prove a theorem. That might not be the way to prove the theorem, but it may be the best way to get you into a lunatic asylum. So you have to watch out for these things and learn how to use your thing. Now, writing the paper, once the theorem is proved and you're ready to write the paper, you can follow a time-honored template for paper writing. There are basically 5 sections: preliminary introduction, preliminary lemmas, main theorem, concluding remarks, and references. Now, the introduction is probably the most important part of the paper. It gives the historical background for the problem, underlines why the problem is important, and what your contribution is. It is essentially a sales pitch to the reader or the referee on why they should take the paper seriously and why it matters. Many people fail in this aspect, and I mean, it would be a mistake to begin your paper by saying, let G be a reductive algebraic group. That's a kind of a terrible way to begin a paper. You have to prepare the paper, assume the reader is not familiar with your research that you've been doing for the last 10 years or whatever. You have to start from a motivational perspective. Language matters. In my career, I've often encountered many students and postdocs and even faculty who simply cannot write properly, nor can they speak properly. Horrible writing is extremely painful to read, as is listening to a horrible speaker. If a nail is taken and screeched across a metal plate, that sound is more euphonious than many of the horrible speakers I have heard. Some students have said that the job of a researcher is to do research and the language is secondary. I disagree totally. Language matters. Research is a communal activity, so the student should practice speaking coherently, writing clearly, and teaching with enthusiasm. The introduction of a paper must be well written and clear. Feedback and acknowledgements. Once the paper is written and you're sure of your results, it's important to get some friendly feedback. Notice I say friendly feedback. You may send the paper to a select few who will give you this friendly feedback. If you send it to, let's say, 5 such people, maybe one will reply with some constructive suggestions. Others may merely thank you for sending it to them. In the acknowledgement of the thesis or the acknowledgement of the paper, you should, of course, thank your advisor and others who have helped you in the endeavor. You can thank those who replied to you when you sent them your paper in the paper case. Such a list may be helpful for the editor. When you submit your paper, the editor actually looks at the acknowledgement section to see who are the other people who read this paper and use that as a basis for maybe sending it out. Not necessarily the people who you acknowledge, sometimes they do, but they get an idea of who's been in that area. When you get a referee report and changes are suggested, please make sure don't forget to thank the referee in your revision, because it'll go back to the referee. And 99.9% of the referees, when they're not thanked, they probably get irritated. What? I gave such good ideas to this person and they don't even thank me. Such negative attitudes on the part of the referee is probably not good for you. Writing the thesis. The PhD thesis, of course, contains new results. It's often the case that in deriving these new results, the student would have had to rewrite existing knowledge in a new way. Sometimes all the theorems and results needed are not in one place, and it is essential to assemble these in a preliminary section. So in essence, the student should write the thesis for themselves partially as a reference book that they will again return to for later research. The section of a thesis is again similar to the sections of a paper: introduction, preliminary results, main theorems, concluding remarks, and future work and references. After the thesis is complete, you can extract a research style paper from it and publish it in various journals. Now, making a great research career. After the PhD, you have a postdoctoral position. So this is a period of speeding up your research process. And from your thesis, you had 4 years to come up with these results, but now you have to speed up and write papers. The first year can be assembling papers out of your thesis, but the first year should also be learning something entirely new from your doctoral work. And this is essential. So many times people make the mistake of continuing their thesis work in their postdoctoral period. Nothing wrong with that, but you really have to learn something new. And language and research have to go hand in hand. If you want to make a research career in mathematics, you should aim to write a minimum of 3 papers each year, with 2 being research papers and 1 can be a conference proceedings. If you can maintain this rate for at least 10 years, I can assure you tenure is assured. Supervision of students. Usually after about 5 years after the PhD, the graduate is required to begin the difficult task of student supervision. So you were the student, now you become the teacher. That doesn't mean you stop being a student. You're still a student, but you're now also a teacher. Usually master's level students are the first, later doctoral students. You can only supervise if you have a supply of relevant problems to give to the student. So one must refrain from producing a factory line of students and results, as is done in some schools around the world. New methods, new disciplines, new theories keep emerging, and it is important to be aware of this and not be overwhelmed by them. And it is essential to inculcate the diligent study of these new themes in a weekly seminar. This gives focus to the student. So you need to have an environment where you can learn without any intimidation. So this weekly seminar is a good idea, keeps students focused. And I use it all the time to keep my students kind of coherent in their focus. And as they're working on things, I get them to speak. No one's going to run away with their ideas. So it's important to create such an environment. And don't broadcast the seminar on the web. That would be very dangerous because the students are still learning and their ideas are being vetted out. Then there's this ethical aspect of research. There's some basic ethical practices everyone must follow. Truthfulness is absolutely essential. And one must ascribe proper credit for ideas in the introduction. References must be accurate. And in the introduction, it's important to cite the breakthrough result rather than the work of the current record holder. And the acknowledgement section of the paper should thank those who provided relevant input to your paper on the thesis or thesis. It's very important to acknowledge anybody who has maybe suggested a line of research. So I hope this summarizes the main ideas. Life is for discovery and self-discovery. There are many higher levels to explore. May the Himalayan peaks of knowledge inspire our minds to greater heights. So thank you for your attention. Of course, this is a big topic. We can talk further, but gives you basic guidelines on habits to cultivate, especially the habit of writing.